Dr. Eliana Foster's gleaming laboratory was a testament to human innovation and curiosity. Nexus Laboratories, nestled in the heart of the sprawling metropolis, had become the world's leading authority on extraterrestrial research. Eliana, with her poised demeanor and penetrating gaze, led a team of brilliant minds who were all captivated by a discovery that promised to reshape the future. In her hands, she held a vial containing a fragment of DNA extracted from an alien species, obtained from a spacecraft that had crash-landed years before. The unique properties of the alien genetic material fascinated Dr. Foster. She believed it held the key to unlocking enhanced human abilities. For this, she needed a human volunteer, someone willing to take a leap into the unknown. Jack Mason, a decorated ex-soldier, had come forward. He was a man driven by the need to belong to something greater after a lifetime of conflict. He sat, tensely awaiting the procedure, in the chamber where brilliant minds had gathered to witness the experiment. As Jack settled into the chair, a series of complex machines hummed around him. Dr. Foster, with her steadfast assistant, Dr. Zane Novak, moved with the careful precision of seasoned professionals. Jack's muscular frame betrayed his tension, but his determination was evident. As Dr. Novak cleaned Jack's arm with an antiseptic wipe, Dr. Foster carefully prepared the syringe containing the neon green alien DNA. With a brief nod, Dr. Foster injected the serum. A collective breath was held as they watched and waited. At first, nothing happened. But then a low hum filled the room as the serum coursed through Jack's veins. His heart raced, his pulse visible against the skin of his neck. The chamber grew cold and Jack's body convulsed as he clutched the chair's arms. Jack's transformation began almost immediately. His eyes, once a deep brown, now glowed a vibrant emerald green, and a latticework of glowing veins appeared on his skin, illuminating the room with an eerie light. Panic set in among the scientists as they observed Jack's rapid and unpredictable changes. Dr. Foster, usually composed, looked on with a mixture of awe and fear. Jack's muscles swelled with newfound strength, and he felt a surge of energy that was both exhilarating and terrifying. His voice became deep and resonant, echoing with an alien timbre. The changes were unlike anything the scientists had anticipated. They scrambled to adjust their equipment and recalibrate their measurements, but nothing prepared them for what was unfolding before their eyes. Jack's transformation continued as the hours passed, each minute bringing new and startling changes. The fluorescent veins crisscrossing his skin pulsed in a rhythmic pattern, casting faint shadows on the laboratory walls. The hum of machinery and the anxious whispers of scientists filled the room as Jack grappled with his newfound abilities. The air seemed to crackle with an electric charge, hinting at the potent energy now coursing through him. Dr. Foster and her team meticulously monitored Jack's condition, noting every flicker of his glowing eyes and every twitch of his expanding muscles. Jack's once familiar form now bore the unmistakable mark of an alien civilization. As he struggled to come to terms with his new reality, a deep-seated fear grew within him. He could sense something lurking beneath the surface of his consciousness, a foreign presence that seemed to whisper and tug at the edges of his mind. Despite his growing unease, Jack soon discovered that his senses had become incredibly sharp. He could hear the faintest of sounds, even the soft buzzing of a fly's wings across the room. His eyesight had sharpened to the point where he could see the intricate patterns on the smallest of objects. This newfound clarity was both exhilarating and overwhelming. One evening, as Jack paced restlessly within the confines of the lab, his patience worn thin, an uncontrollable surge of energy coursed through him. In a moment of panic, he unleashed a blast of raw power, sending a shockwave across the room. Equipment shattered and scientists ducked for cover. The room descended into chaos as Dr. Foster and her team scrambled to contain the fallout. Dr. Foster rushed to Jack's side, her face etched with concern. "We need to stabilize him," she said urgently, turning to Dr. Novak, who was busy recalibrating equipment. Jack, overwhelmed by the sheer force of his own power, trembled with fear and regret. The alien presence within him seemed to grow stronger, whispering dark thoughts and filling him with dread. As the days passed, Jack's condition oscillated between moments of clarity and uncontrollable outbursts. he began to fear for the safety of those around him. In moments of lucidity, he confided in Dr. Foster about the disturbing presence he felt within his mind. She listened intently, her brow furrowed with worry. The experiment had taken an unexpected turn, and she realized they were dealing with a far more complex and dangerous situation than they had anticipated. In the midst of this turmoil, Jack experienced vivid hallucinations, scenes of distant planets and alien landscapes that seemed all too real. These visions, though fleeting, were accompanied by a sense of dread, as if he were seeing through the eyes of a being far removed from humanity. The line between reality and hallucination blurred, leaving Jack uncertain of his own identity. Dr. Foster, deeply concerned for Jack's well-being, initiated a series of tests to understand the full extent of the alien DNA's impact. She was determined to find a solution, but as each day passed, Jack's condition seemed to spiral further out of control. The alien presence within him grew stronger, and he began to fear that he would lose himself entirely. The chaos surrounding Jack's transformation reached a crescendo, the laboratory bustling with frenetic energy as Dr. Foster and her team scrambled to manage the situation. Jack's abilities had grown alarmingly potent. The glowing veins that traversed his skin pulsated with a brilliant intensity, and his strength had increased exponentially. Each movement he made seemed to send ripples of power through the air, making the very fabric of reality seem pliable in his hands. Jack's emotions mirrored the turbulence within him. As the alien presence in his mind grew more insistent, he struggled to maintain control. Dr. Foster, now deeply concerned, decided to confine him to an isolated chamber, hoping to minimize the potential danger. She spoke to him through a thick, soundproof glass partition, her voice steady but lined with worry. Inside the chamber, Jack grappled with his new abilities. He discovered that he could manipulate electromagnetic fields, bending and shaping energy at will. However, his lack of control turned each experiment into a potential catastrophe. One day, a sudden surge of power resulted in a violent explosion, shattering equipment and causing an emergency lockdown in the lab. Dr. Foster and Dr. Novak worked tirelessly, analyzing data and brainstorming solutions. They realized that the alien DNA had not only augmented Jack's physical abilities, but also granted him access to a form of telepathy. This telepathy, however, came at a price, as the alien consciousness that now inhabited Jack's mind began to assert its dominance, challenging Jack's sense of self. Amidst the growing turmoil, Jack began to experience intense moments of rage, driven by a primal instinct that was foreign to his human nature. These episodes were terrifying, not only for him, but for everyone around him. During one such outburst, he accidentally unleashed a powerful energy wave, tearing through the lab and injuring several scientists. Dr. Foster, increasingly desperate, searched for a solution. She discovered that the alien DNA belonged to a race known as the Zolorians, a species renowned for their aggression and volatile nature. The realization that Jack's transformation was far more dangerous than anticipated filled her with dread. She knew they needed to act quickly before Jack lost himself completely to the alien influence. In a moment of clarity, Jack pleaded with Dr. Foster to find a way to stabilize his condition. He feared that he would become a danger to everyone he loved. Dr. Foster promised to do everything in her power to help him, but the path ahead seemed fraught with uncertainty. As Jack's condition deteriorated, the military became increasingly concerned about the potential threat he posed. Dr. Foster was placed under immense pressure to contain the situation, and the laboratory was surrounded by armed guards. The atmosphere was tense, as if the entire facility was holding its breath, waiting for the next inevitable disaster. One night, Jack experienced a vivid vision of a distant planet, a desolate landscape filled with shadowy figures. The vision was so real that he felt the cold wind on his skin and heard the whispers of an alien language echoing in his mind. The vision left him shaken, as he realized that the alien presence within him was growing stronger, attempting to assert its will. Dr. Foster, witnessing Jack's distress, redoubled her efforts to find a cure. She began to experiment with counter-serums, hoping to neutralize the alien DNA's influence. However, each attempt seemed only to exacerbate Jack's condition, causing his powers to become more unpredictable and dangerous. With each passing day, the alien consciousness within Jack grew stronger, and his moments of clarity grew shorter. Dr. Foster knew that time was running out. The stakes were higher than ever, and the fate of both Jack and the world hung in the balance as the experiment spiraled out of control. Jack's sense of dread deepened as his newfound abilities veered out of control. He remained isolated in the lab's secure containment unit, a place designed for the most dangerous experiments. The walls, reinforced with alien alloys, seemed almost insufficient to contain the storm brewing inside him. Jack's luminous green eyes flickered with an eerie glow, highlighting the intense internal conflict raging within. Dr. Foster and her team were at a loss. The alien DNA, now fully integrated into Jack's system, had magnified his powers to unprecedented levels. Jack, driven by a volatile mix of fear and aggression, found himself struggling to maintain even a semblance of his former self. The alien presence within him was becoming more dominant, and his outbursts more frequent. During a particularly intense episode, Jack's rage boiled over. The containment unit, designed to withstand powerful forces, shook violently as Jack unleashed a surge of energy. The walls buckled, and equipment shattered as if made of glass. The team watched in horror from the safety of the observation deck as Jack, consumed by an alien rage, tore through the lab. Realizing the imminent danger, Dr. Foster attempted to tranquilize Jack. But as she and Dr. Novak approached, Jack's instincts kicked in, and a force field of energy erupted around him, pushing them back. Jack's mind, now a battleground between his human and alien sides, faltered under the strain. In a moment of clarity, he saw the fear in Dr. Foster's eyes and, filled with guilt and despair, fled the lab in a desperate attempt to protect them. The city beyond the lab was unprepared for the whirlwind of destruction Jack brought with him. Buildings shook, cars were overturned, and chaos spread as Jack, unable to control his powers, inadvertently wreaked havoc. Dr. Foster, heartbroken and desperate to save Jack, tried to reason with him through the lab's communication system, but her pleas were drowned out by the sounds of panic and destruction. Jack sought refuge in the outskirts of the city, far from prying eyes and potential victims. There, in the desolation of an abandoned warehouse, he wrestled with his inner demons. The alien presence within him grew stronger, whispering dark thoughts and pushing him towards the brink of madness. Jack feared losing himself entirely, becoming a mere vessel for the alien entity that seemed determined to consume him. Back at the lab, Dr. Foster worked tirelessly to find a solution. She knew that the alien DNA could be stabilized using a counter serum, but the ingredients were rare and nearly impossible to obtain on Earth. The urgency of the situation pushed her to the brink of exhaustion as she frantically searched for alternatives. The government, meanwhile, had become increasingly concerned about the potential catastrophe unfolding. Captain Mira Lewis, a decorated soldier with a reputation for ruthlessness, was tasked with capturing Jack. She viewed him as a dangerous weapon that needed to be contained, regardless of the cost. As her team prepared to deploy, Dr. Foster pleaded for more time, arguing that Jack was not a monster, but a man trapped in a nightmare. Captain Lewis, however, was unwavering. She saw Jack as a threat to national security and was determined to neutralize him. The hunt began, and Jack, still grappling with the alien presence within him, found himself on the run. The city, now a battleground, held its breath as the two forces prepared for an inevitable showdown. As the sun set over the city, a restless calm settled over Nexus Laboratories. The air was thick with tension as Captain Mira Lewis and her elite team of soldiers prepared to hunt down Jack. The mood was grim, the soldiers stoically arming themselves with experimental weaponry designed specifically to counter Jack's formidable abilities. Meanwhile, Dr. Foster, feeling increasingly helpless, watched from her lab, her mind racing with potential solutions to save Jack from both the alien DNA and the military's wrath. Jack, on the run and battling against the alien consciousness threatening to overwhelm him, sought refuge in a secluded forest on the city's outskirts. The forest, a maze of shadows and twisting paths, mirrored the turmoil within his mind. As he crouched beneath the canopy, his senses heightened. He could hear the faint hum of the approaching helicopters. The hunt had begun, and he knew he was the prey. Captain Lewis's team moved swiftly and silently, their infrared goggles piercing through the night. The forest seemed alive with whispers and hidden dangers, but the soldiers pressed forward, driven by the urgency of their mission. As they closed in on Jack's location, they communicated through hand signals, preparing to strike. Dr. Foster, watching the scene unfold through satellite feeds, felt a pang of dread. She knew Jack's powers were unpredictable and that any confrontation could end disastrously. She clung to the hope that she could find a solution before it was too late. Beside her, Dr. Novak worked tirelessly, running simulations and analyzing data, hoping to stabilize the alien DNA before disaster struck. In the dark of the forest, Jack's senses were in overdrive. The alien presence within him seemed to revel in the impending conflict, urging him to unleash his powers. Jack, fighting against the invasive thoughts, felt a surge of rage and fear. As the soldiers closed in, he knew he was losing the battle for control. Captain Lewis, sensing the danger, ordered her team to prepare for engagement. The night air crackled with tension as the soldiers aimed their weapons at the shadowy figure crouched among the trees. Jack, his glowing eyes blazing with a mixture of fear and defiance, unleashed a powerful energy blast, sending the soldiers scattering. The battle that ensued was fierce and chaotic. Jack, driven by desperation, fought with a ferocity that matched the soldiers' determination. Explosions rocked the forest as Jack's uncontrollable energy waves clashed with the military's advanced weaponry. Captain Lewis, moving with precision and calm, directed her team with ruthless efficiency. As the battle raged, Dr. Foster made a breakthrough. The counter serum designed to neutralize the alien DNA was finally ready. She quickly relayed the information to Captain Lewis, urging her to capture Jack alive. The captain, torn between her duty and her empathy, agreed to try. In a tense standoff, Captain Lewis and Jack faced each other. The air was thick with the scent of burning vegetation and the sound of distant explosions. Jack, his mind a swirling vortex of conflicting thoughts, stood ready to fight to the death. Captain Lewis, seeing the desperation in his eyes, hesitated. Dr. Foster's voice came through the radio, calm and authoritative. "Jack, we have a cure," she said, her voice filled with hope. Jack, torn between the alien voice urging him to fight and his own desire for peace, finally relented. The soldiers moved quickly, subduing him and injecting the counter serum. As the serum coursed through his veins, Jack felt the alien presence retreating, leaving him exhausted but free. Captain Lewis, watching the transformation, felt a surge of relief. The danger had passed, and Jack was saved. With the alien consciousness retreating, Jack's mind cleared for the first time in days. The forest, scorched and scarred by the intense battle, fell silent. Captain Lewis, relieved but wary, instructed her team to secure the area, while Dr. Foster, via a secure communication channel, advised on stabilizing Jack's condition. Jack, exhausted and emotionally drained, was finally captured. Despite the lingering fear in his eyes, he no longer resisted. As Jack was transported back to Nexus Laboratories under heavy guard, Dr. Foster and Dr. Novak prepared to administer the remaining treatments. The counter serum had worked initially, but they knew that a more permanent solution was needed to prevent the alien DNA from reasserting control. The lab, once a place of hope and scientific curiosity, now felt like a fortress under siege as the team prepared for the worst. At the same time, Kale, the mysterious Zolorian who had been tracking Jack, watched from the shadows. He had been observing the chaos unfold, and now, with Jack subdued, he made his move. Kale, a member of the Zolorian resistance, had been searching for a way to neutralize the dangerous effects of his race's DNA. He infiltrated the lab under the cover of night, intent on saving Jack from a fate worse than death. Inside the lab, Jack was placed in a reinforced containment chamber. His mind, now clear of the alien influence, was filled with a deep sense of despair. He feared what he might become if the alien DNA took over again. Dr. Foster, her face etched with worry, reassured him as she administered the next phase of treatment. Kale, slipping through the lab's security, reached the containment chamber. He revealed himself to Dr. Foster and Dr. Novak, offering them crucial information about the Zolorian DNA. Kale explained that the DNA was part of a failed experiment to create super soldiers for intergalactic war. The genetic instability was a result of an unintended side effect, and only a specific combination of elements could neutralize it permanently. Dr. Foster, realizing the importance of Cale's information, quickly integrated it into her research. Together, the team worked tirelessly to synthesize a final cure. Meanwhile, Captain Lewis, now aware of Cale's presence, maintained a cautious watch. She understood the stakes but remained skeptical of the alien's intentions. As the scientists prepared the cure, Jack's condition worsened. The alien presence, though temporarily subdued, began to reassert itself. Jack's strength grew, and the containment chamber strained under the pressure. In a desperate bid to prevent disaster, Dr. Foster and Cale administered the newly developed cure, praying it would work. Jack convulsed as the cure took effect. The lab held its breath as he writhed in pain, his body rejecting the alien DNA. Slowly, his condition stabilized, and the glowing veins that had crisscrossed his skin faded. The alien presence, once a menacing shadow in his mind, dissipated entirely. Jack, exhausted and weakened, fell into a deep sleep. Dr. Foster, Cale, and Captain Lewis watched over him, their relief palpable. The crisis for now seemed to be over, but they knew that the repercussions of the experiment would linger. The laboratory, once a beacon of scientific discovery, had become a battleground where human and alien forces clashed. As they reflected on the events, they understood that their work was far from over. The alien DNA, though subdued, left behind a legacy of uncertainty and fear. The quiet that settled over Nexus Laboratories was deceptive. While Jack Mason lay in a deep, exhausted sleep, the implications of the past few days lingered heavily over the team. Dr. Eliana Foster and Dr. Zane Novak, alongside the enigmatic alien Cale, monitored Jack's vital signs carefully. The Zolorian DNA, although dormant for now, had left its mark, and the team knew they needed to remain vigilant. Captain Mira Lewis stood guard, her demeanor as steely as ever. She had seen the destructive power that Jack wielded during his battle against her team, and though she admired Dr. Foster's dedication to saving him, she remained wary. The containment chamber where Jack lay was fortified, designed to withstand any unforeseen resurgence of his abilities. The tension in the air was palpable, as the future remained uncertain. As the days passed, Jack's health gradually improved. The treatment administered by Dr. Foster and Cale had worked, stabilizing the alien DNA within him. However, Jack's newfound abilities persisted, albeit in a more controlled manner. The glowing veins that once crisscrossed his skin had faded, replaced by a subtle luminescence that hinted at the dormant power within him. Cale, the Zolorian resistance member, continued to assist the team. He shared his knowledge of the alien race, revealing the truth behind their genetic experiments. The Zolorians, once a proud and powerful civilization, had been corrupted by their own ambitions, leading to the disastrous attempt to create super soldiers. Cale's insights helped the team understand the dangers they faced and the potential threats still lurking. One evening, as Jack sat up in his containment chamber, he looked at Dr. Foster with a mix of gratitude and fear. "What if it happens again?" he asked, his voice tinged with anxiety. Dr. Foster, her expression gentle but firm, reassured him. "We're monitoring you closely, Jack," she said. "We've learned a lot from Cale, and we're prepared for any eventuality." Despite Dr. Foster's reassurances, the unease among the team persisted. The alien DNA, though stabilized, remained unpredictable. Jack, though physically stable, struggled with the mental strain of his transformation. The alien presence, while subdued, had left a lingering impact on his psyche, and he often woke from vivid nightmares of alien landscapes and shadowy figures. Captain Lewis, observing Jack's turmoil, began to soften her stance. She recognized the human beneath the powerful exterior, a man struggling to come to terms with his new reality. She offered Jack her support, promising to protect him from any future threats, whether from within or without. As the team worked to secure a permanent solution, they faced an unexpected challenge. A rogue faction of Zolorians, alerted to Cale's presence on Earth, sought to reclaim the alien DNA. The faction, led by a ruthless warlord, descended upon Nexus Laboratories with the intent of capturing Jack and using him as a weapon in their intergalactic war. The ensuing battle was fierce and chaotic. The laboratory, once a place of scientific discovery, became a war zone as Jack, Kale, and the team fought to defend against the invading Zolorians. Jack, tapping into his latent abilities, unleashed powerful energy waves that rocked the facility. Kale, fighting alongside him, used his advanced technology to repel the attackers. In the heat of the battle, Dr. Foster and Dr. Novak worked frantically to prepare a final counter-serum, one that would neutralize the alien DNA entirely. As the Zolorians pressed their attack, Jack and Kale fought valiantly, determined to protect the lab and the city beyond. Finally, with the counter-serum ready, Dr. Foster administered the treatment to Jack. As the serum coursed through his veins, Jack felt the alien presence dissipate, leaving him fully in control for the first time since the experiment began. With a renewed sense of purpose, Jack and Kale pushed back the Zolorian invaders, defeating the rogue faction and securing the lab. In the aftermath of the battle, the team reflected on the events that had transpired. The alien DNA, once a source of fear and uncertainty, had been neutralized. Jack, though changed, had found a new sense of purpose. Dr. Foster, Kale, and Captain Lewis stood together, united in their resolve to protect humanity from future threats. The rogue Zolorians' invasion had left Nexus laboratories in disarray. The once pristine facility now bore the scars of battle, with shattered equipment and scorched walls bearing testament to the ferocity of the conflict. Amidst the ruins, Dr. Eliana Foster, Jack Mason, and their unlikely allies regrouped, their resolve hardened by the trials they had faced. The sense of victory was tempered by the knowledge that their challenges were far from over. Jack, his abilities now stabilized but his mind haunted by the remnants of the alien presence, stood amidst the wreckage, his glowing eyes subdued but alert. The counter-serum administered by Dr. Foster had neutralized the alien DNA, but it left behind a potent residual power. Jack knew he needed to learn how to control this power or risk becoming a danger to those he sought to protect. Dr. Foster, her lab coat singed and her hair disheveled, approached Jack with a look of determination. "We need to move forward, Jack," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "The alien DNA may be neutralized, but your abilities are still evolving. We need to understand what we're dealing with." Kale, the Zolorian resistance fighter who had become an invaluable ally, nodded in agreement. "The Zolorian DNA is powerful," he said, his voice resonant with authority. "But it can be controlled with the right training. Jack, you have the potential to be more than just a test subject. You can be a guardian." Jack looked at Kale and Dr. Foster, the weight of their words sinking in. He realized that his journey was only beginning, and that his newfound abilities came with a responsibility to protect those he cared about. With renewed resolve, he agreed to undergo the training necessary to harness his powers. Captain Mira Lewis, who had initially viewed Jack as a threat, now saw him as a potential ally. She offered to assist in his training, recognizing the importance of his abilities in safeguarding against future threats. The team, united by their shared experiences, prepared to face the challenges ahead with a sense of purpose and determination. As Jack began his training, the lab worked tirelessly to rebuild and fortify. Dr. Novak, ever the diligent scientist, developed new protocols to monitor Jack's evolving abilities, ensuring that they could respond quickly to any unforeseen changes. The atmosphere was tense but hopeful as the team adapted to their new reality. During his training, Jack discovered that his abilities extended beyond mere physical enhancements. He could manipulate energy fields, create powerful force shields, and even project his consciousness into the minds of others. The training was intense, pushing Jack to his limits, but with Kale and Captain Lewis guiding him, he learned to control his powers and use them for good. One evening, as Jack practiced projecting his consciousness, he stumbled upon a disturbing vision. He saw a shadowy figure, a Zolorian warlord bent on conquering Earth, leading a massive fleet towards the planet. The vision was so vivid and terrifying that it left Jack shaken. He realized that the battle was far from over and that the rogue Zolorian faction was planning a full-scale invasion. Dr. Foster, upon hearing Jack's vision, sprang into action. The team prepared for the impending invasion, using Jack's abilities to predict the enemy's movements and devise a strategy for defense. The atmosphere was charged with a sense of urgency and determination as they readied themselves for the coming storm. When the Zolorian fleet arrived, the battle was fierce and unforgiving. Jack, now fully in control of his powers, fought with a strength and determination that inspired those around him. Cale, Captain Lewis, and Dr. Foster stood by his side, united in their resolve to protect Earth from the alien threat. As the battle raged on, Jack faced the shadowy warlord from his vision. The two clashed in a fierce showdown, their powers colliding in a dazzling display of energy and light. Jack, drawing on his training and the strength of his newfound allies, defeated the warlord, ending the Zolorian threat once and for all. The dust settled over Nexus Laboratories, and the remnants of the Zolorian fleet drifted aimlessly in space, defeated and abandoned. Jack Mason, now fully in control of his powers, stood among the ruins of the battlefield, breathing heavily but victorious. The sky above was a tapestry of stars, and the air was filled with a sense of hard-won peace. The battle had been fierce, but Earth was safe, thanks to Jack and his unlikely band of allies. Dr. Eliana Foster, her face lined with exhaustion but shining with pride, approached Jack, her eyes filled with admiration. "You did it, Jack," she said softly, her voice carrying a mixture of relief and joy. "You saved us all." Jack smiled, a weary but genuine expression, and glanced at Cale and Captain Mira Lewis, who stood nearby, their expressions mirroring Dr. Foster's. Cale, the Zolorian resistance fighter, nodded approvingly. "You've proven yourself, Jack," he said, his voice filled with respect. "You are a true warrior, and more importantly, a true protector." Jack, though humbled by the praise, knew that the victory was a collective effort. He looked around at his friends, grateful for their support and the bonds they had forged. The aftermath of the battle brought a time of rebuilding and reflection. Nexus Laboratories, damaged but not destroyed, became a hub of activity as the team worked to restore what had been lost. Dr. Novak, ever the diligent scientist, spearheaded the effort, his meticulous nature guiding the reconstruction. The lab, a symbol of hope and resilience, began to take shape once more. As they worked, Jack and his team reflected on the journey they had undertaken. The alien DNA, once a source of fear and uncertainty, had become a catalyst for growth and transformation. Jack, through his trials and tribulations, had become a beacon of hope, a guardian for humanity. The alien presence, though subdued, had left behind a legacy of strength and courage. Captain Lewis, once wary of Jack, now viewed him as a trusted ally. She offered him a place on her team, recognizing the value of his abilities in protecting Earth from future threats. Jack, though honored by the offer, declined, choosing instead to focus on understanding his powers and helping those in need. He knew that his journey was far from over and that his newfound abilities came with a responsibility to protect and serve. Cale, having fulfilled his mission, prepared to return to his home planet. He and Jack shared a heartfelt farewell, their bond forged in battle and strengthened by mutual respect. Cale promised to return if needed, leaving behind a beacon of communication that would connect Earth to the Zolorian resistance. Dr. Foster, watching the exchange, felt a deep sense of satisfaction and hope. The experiment that had begun with uncertainty and fear had ended with triumph and unity. She knew that the future held challenges, but with Jack and his team standing guard, she felt confident in the future they were building together. In the quiet moments after the battle, as the team gathered to celebrate their victory, Jack looked to the stars. The universe, vast and unknown, beckoned to him, filled with possibilities and adventures waiting to be explored. He knew that his journey was just beginning, and that his role as a guardian was not yet over. With his friends by his side and a newfound sense of purpose, Jack faced the future with hope and determination. Together, they had faced the unknown and emerged victorious. The story of the man who was injected with the DNA of an alien civilization had reached its conclusion, but a new chapter was waiting to begin, filled with hope, adventure, and the promise of a brighter future.